How are your relationships today? Personal, professional. Could they be better? Welcome to Talk Time with Trish, with host Trish Forante and co-host Lisa Stewart. There are so many variables that affect our lives. What makes the difference in our lives is genuine communication. Now, here are your hosts, Trish Forante and Lisa Stewart.
Hi, this is Trish Forante, and welcome to our inaugural show of Talk Time with Trish. This show is dedicated to a close friend of mine who is one of the best, or was one of the best communicators that I have ever come across in my entire personal and professional life. She has since passed, unfortunately, but this show is dedicated to her. Today we have Dr. Lisa Stewart with us, who is my co-host down the road, but today I'm going to be interviewing her, and we will be talking about romantic relationships, which is one of our fortes, or her forte. Dr. Stewart, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today, Trish, to discuss one of my favorite topics, which is communication, which is what the show is about in general, how to enhance your relationships and to be a more effective communicator. And as you know, I've done a lot of work over the past 20 years as a counselor with individuals, couples, families. And I've also worked as an EAP, or Employee Assistance Program consultant, in the corporate world.
Extensive background, I know. Let's get started. Let's move right into this, and let's talk about relationships, romantic relationships. Let's talk about the male-female thing. Males, as I think, are typically not comfortable with dealing with emotions, not as comfortable as women are. Your take on that?
I agree 100%. Now, I might be generalizing some, but from my experience as a therapist and, again, in working in the corporate arena, I see that women typically are socialized to be more comfortable in the emotional arena. Men are typically socialized to problem solve. So that ends up becoming a problem when men and women are trying to communicate with each other, because the women want to deal with the emotional arena and the men want to problem solve.
Or hide. They either want to problem solve or go into their cave. Or both. And
now I have to point out that, again, it's a generalization, but I think there are definitely some gender differences that if anyone's ever, heard or read anything from men are from Mars, women are from Venus, I think that holds true. There are definite gender differences when it comes to, dealing with emotions and just how we speak to each other, the language, of each gender.
Yeah, and so let's talk about some examples. In your private practice, let's sort of dissect some of the situations that you have come across, maintaining confidentiality, of course, but let's sort of dive into some of those.
Okay. Well, often with many of the couples that I work with, I see that the men will shut down when the emotional intensity increases. And, for example, when the spouse or partner starts crying, many men want to run for the hills and not deal with that.
Or they'll say, stop crying, please, stop crying, don't cry.
Right.
They'll do anything not to have a woman cry.
Exactly. And, I want to give you a real specific example of a couple that I worked with several years ago. And I'll call them John and Susan for the purposes of today. But basically, the husband, the male, grew up with a very emotional mother. He grew up watching his mother cry a lot and become extremely emotional when there were problems in the family. And in watching his parents' dynamics, he formed the impression that when women cry, they're trying to manipulate to get their way. And in this particular situation, he would become angry and shut down whenever his wife would cry, because he saw that as an attempt to manipulate him.
And what did shutting down look like? What did that feel like for the wife, for the other partner?
Well, again, she felt abandoned. She felt like he did not want to communicate with her. She felt rejected. And she happened to grow up in a household where it was not okay to express anger at all. So when she was crying, she would cry when there was any type of conflict. And in particular, when she was angry or frustrated, because that was what was okay to do. It was not okay to express anger. So whenever there would be a conflict, she would cry. He would feel like she was trying to manipulate, and he would shut down or walk away or run away quickly. And she would become more frustrated and angry, feel abandoned, and the intensity would actually increase. So neither one of them was getting what they wanted, and oftentimes it would lead to major blow-ups.
And so what's the solution to that? When you were working with this couple, that's where you started with them. Where did you move them to?
Well, part of the challenge, I think, with most couples is getting them to really put themselves in the shoes of the other person.
Empathy.
Exactly. So as together in the same room, I had them each share the history and share what they grew up with and how their perception came to be. In other words, what was it like in their own family growing up, and why, what were their beliefs, and how did they come to be, so that each would really understand where the other was coming from. So we talked about the pattern and how it came to be, and then I would work with each of them individually for 1 or 2 sessions to coach them on how to change their behavior.
Okay, and can we safely and securely refer to that as learning the other's language? Is that part of that process of learning the other's language?
Absolutely, because in this example, I coached the wife on how to become more comfortable with her own anger and frustration, to talk herself down, and to try to speak her husband's language, which in this case did not include tears and emotions. So for her,
good luck there.
So I worked with her pretty intensely to get her to be able to state her case and make her point and give her permission to be angry or upset without crying every time. And, with the theory being that she would be more likely to get what she wants if she's able to communicate in such a way that he could hear her. And the tears did not work. And then individually, I also coached the husband on how to respond when his wife was tearful, because she was not going to be perfect at it. There were going to be times when she still would cry or, become emotional. And, I gave him some communication tools on how to actually stay in the moment with her and to tolerate the emotional intensity and what to say.
And what were some of those tools? Let's talk about that. But before we do that, I sort of I'm listening to you and I'm thinking of my own situation, and I know as soon as the tear ducts begin, I get don't cry, please don't cry, don't cry, please don't cry. And it does, in my case, it makes me laugh, and I do stop crying. I don't go there regardless of the situation. So there are many different ways that this can be dealt with. But so tools, what were some of the tools? The actual hands-on practical tools, what were they?
Well, in this case, we can talk about this a little bit more later too, but I talked with him about, validating or acknowledging her anger, her frustration, her upset, and just really being able to stay calm and stay in the moment. So listening, really becoming a listener versus immediately trying to solve the problem, which is what he always wanted to do, was to immediately. Exactly. He got out his toolbox and wanted to fix the problem, because he either didn't want to be manipulated, if that's what he saw the tears as, or he didn't want her to cry, which was upsetting for him.
Yeah. So validating now, forgive me when I sort of just move in this direction and stay there for a moment. Men and validating thoughts and feelings. That's a tricky one. What does that sound like?
Well, I think it's tricky for everyone. I even think women have a hard time doing this sometimes, which is just being able, because, in a conflict, when you're angry, when someone's angry, anger, I think, is the hardest emotion to validate, because when I say to you, You seem angry. I can tell you're upset at me. Ooh, that's a hard one because some people feel like I'm saying you're right to be angry at me, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I notice that you're angry or you seem upset. And honestly, that tends to take the wind out of most people's sails. It tends to de-escalate the situation almost immediately because it's hard to stay angry at someone that really gets you and really understands.
Oh, that goes back to some tidbits of wisdom that I've come across just throughout my life that goes something along the lines of two can't if one won't.
Yes.
Which means if I align with you, if I'm suddenly on your side, we can't fight anymore. We can't argue anymore. In my case, when I'm hit with anger, my comeback is typically, what's going on? This isn't about me. What's going on? And so how would that fit in your bag of tricks? Is that something that you could hear yourself offering up to any of your clients that you see in your private practice?
Yes, I think, if we pay attention to ourselves and we actually tune in to how we're feeling and responding and keeping ourselves in check, and not engaging in the battle, because again, if you engage in the battle, you're participating in it. So there are definitely some tools to sort of talk ourselves down and pay attention to what our motivation is so that we don't end up, engaging in that battle a lot of times.
Which is tough because most people, what they typically do is, as you're talking, I'm getting ready for battle. I'm getting ready. My wheels are turning. I'm hearing every fifth word that you say. I'm not hearing it all. And I'm ready to come back with a response. And so to have people just stop, take a deep breath and say, I sense that you're angry. Okay. Okay. And what kind of luck have you had with that?
Well, again, it takes lots and lots of practice. But it can be done if we work hard enough at it. It's a matter of just practicing stopping and breathing and talking ourselves down.
Okay. Well, here we are. It's time for us to take a short break. This is Trish Forante with my guest and co-host, Dr. Lisa Stewart. You're listening to Talk Time with Trish on the Health and Wellness Channel on the Voice America Network.
Better communication means better relationships in every sense of the word. When you communicate more effectively and interact more effectively, your life is lived more effectively. Tune in to Talk Time with Trish, featuring host Trish Forante and co-host Lisa Stewart. Our program is all about the human element. We are all comprised of parts and stuff that we may be aware of or others may be aware of. When we become aware of what others are aware of, it means more to us. Tune in every Friday at noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific on Voice America Health and Wellness.